Assalamu alaikum. This podcast has been brought to you by SeekersGuidance, the global Islamic seminary. Help us spread the light of prophetic guidance to millions around the world by becoming a monthly supporter. Make a small donation at seekersguidance.org/donate. As little as $10 a month can help people find life-changing guidance.
The next question is, how are new fatwas in medical ethics given according to the traditional four schools in modern times?
How are fatwas related to medical ethics given? That's a huge question according to the traditional school. The schools of Islamic law are not a collection of opinions, right? A madhab is a legal method. It's a legal methodology that we have a corpus of we have primary sources, the Quran and the Sunnah of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, primarily, and then we have the understanding of the Sahaba, etc., which are explanatory of the Sunnah, of the Quran and the Sunnah. We have the primary sources and the supporting sources. Now, how do you understand those sources? Right? So each school of Islamic law is an interpretive method. That how do I understand the Quran and the Sunnah? Right? Someone says follow the Quran and Sunnah. The question is how? Right? The text doesn't explain itself. Two texts do not fit together on their own. You have to put them together. And how do you join between a general text that is permitting something and a specific text that is making a prohibition? How do you piece the two together? There's different ways of piecing them together. With respect to hadith, how strong is an evidence? Right? How do you join between texts of different levels of evidence? Right? Is this narrator acceptable or not? It's a matter of ijtihad. So the schools of Islamic law have method of how you handle the evidence in terms of its strength, the extent of its indication. How do you join between texts, particularly, for example, between the general and the specific, the decisive and the non-decisive, etc. Now, there are some things that are clear in the religion that the various schools of Islamic law would concur on. And there's details that they do differ upon. So when it comes to medical ethics, there are two primary areas where in the last 50 years, most of the effort of contemporary senior scholars has revolved. One is matters related to financial transactions. And the second is related to medical ethics. Because these are two great areas of new human endeavor or revised human endeavor. And there's been a lot of active scholarly engagement in that at a level that is admirable. Because if you consider where these ulama are coming from, they're coming together from countries that are troubled, from economies that are still in states of post-colonial trauma. Very often, they themselves are politically persecuted, right? With no funding base behind them, right? A research student at an Ivy League college in Islamic studies is often likely to have more personal books than a high-level scholar is, because many of them don't have. One of my teachers in Damascus, and he'd been studying, he had ijazah from the senior-most scholars. When he'd do a research paper, he'd visit me at my house in Damascus and borrow books from me, because they don't have books. They'd have to pick their times to go to the central library because there are security concerns. So the ulama have struggled hard to serve. And a lot of research has been done in these areas. Now, the nature of anything new, right, is that when there's a new field of human endeavor, there'll be a mushrooming of legal opinions. And there'll be debate about them. And there'll be argument. And there'll be a consensus that'll emerge of what are acceptable opinions, what are weaker opinions, what are peripheral opinions in any field of human endeavor that is on the basis of human judgment. And the same thing applies in matters of medical ethics and in matters of financial transactions. And in this, there are international bodies of Islamic law, like the Islamic Fiqh Academy, for example, and other such bodies that engage in what's called collective ijtihad, right? Where they gather some of the senior-most scholars and they engage in legal, research and then legal discussion, and they come to resolutions collectively, right? And particularly on sensitive matters, right, one takes recourse to two things, above all. One is one looks at what do the most trustworthy bodies of Islamic law, such as the Islamic Fiqh Academy, as probably the most prestigious, Majma' al-Fiqh al-Islami, and there's others, right? So in any field, what are the main bodies when it comes to Islamic finance or financial transactions and commercial law? AOFI, AAOIFI, the Accounting and Auditing Organization for Islamic Financial Institutions, AOFI, هيئة المعايير الشرعية للمؤسسات المالية الإسلامية, but it's famous even AOFI. Terrible acronym, but it is what it is. This is also considered highly reputable, and there's others. One looks at what are the main standard-setting bodies, number one. Number two, who are the scholars of recognized and accepted authority in these areas, and one looks at their opinions, right? Because someone may be a faqih, but unless you're looking at the actual nitty-gritty of the issues, you won't know, right? And many of these issues there's many considerations that hit the issue at once. Like, what is brain death, for example? When does someone die? Right? That's an issue that just in medical ethics in general, it's a matter of significant debate. Because it comes, at what point can you take organs? Because the body is like cold and dead, the organs are totally cool. But if you take it too soon, isn't the person still alive? Right? What is the point of death? Right? And there's a legal consideration of this as well. Because while a person is alive, you can't take their organs. Of course, separate, can you take their organs to begin with, etc.? That's a separate point, right? Or even many of these issues, that organ donation, for example, there are ethical considerations, in favor and against, right? And so that's sort of how one would approach. But a lot of work has been done in these. Much of the work, of course, the language of the major language of Islam is Arabic, right? Now these issues affect us in the West as well, whether doctors or financial practitioners, etc. But it's a collective obligation that is neglected of how we take the research that the ulama have engaged in and make it available to practitioners. That's not the responsibility of the ulama, it's a collective obligation that falls on everybody, and that's to a large extent not fulfilled at the community level, right? That much has been done there in medical ethics and financial matters, but it is the responsibility of practitioners to educate themselves and to facilitate the process that lead to education.
Thank you for listening. This podcast was brought to you by Seekers Guidance, the Global Islamic Seminary. Visit SeekersGuidance.org to access reliable Islamic knowledge taught by qualified teachers. We offer a wide range of courses, podcasts, articles, and a world-class answer service. Support us in spreading free, reliable Islamic knowledge to millions around the world by becoming a monthly supporter. Visit SeekersGuidance.org/donate and make a small monthly commitment today. Our beloved Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said, "Whoever guides someone to goodness will have a similar reward." So don't forget to share this podcast and spread prophetic guidance.